Well, hello model car fans. Welcome to the Muscle Car Modeler. My name is Raul, and here's a build of a 69 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am. And when it came to the 69 Trans Am, this is a car that I really like. Just the package, the way it's built, the spoiler, the hood, the stripes, everything about the street car I really like. And it's just a pretty cool car, and there used to be one that ran around here that I would see quite a bit, and really admired that car, and which helped motivate me to build this particular one. And also talking with the owner of that car, because it had some unusual features about that particular car, and I thought it was a clone because of it, and it turns out it wasn't, but that was that specific car. But when it came to the 69 Trans Am, here's a car that was named after a racing series that it was not allowed to race in, mainly because of its 400 cubic inch engine that was standard in this package. Unlike its Camaro stablemate, which had a special 302 engine as part of the package. So it was allowed to race because in the racing series they were limited to 5-liter displacement, 302 displacement in the Camaros, and also the 69 Boss 302s. But unlike those cars, the 69 Trans Am had a 400 cubic inch engine, so it was not allowed to race in the racing series because of too big of an engine. Which is ironic because the racing series had dropped that ruling for 1970, which is why the 70 Javelin Trans Am package car, which came with a 390 cubic inch engine, the Trans Am for 1970 had a 400 as well. Also the two Mopar entries, the Challenger TA and the AAR CUDA, both those came with 340 cubic inch engines and multiple carburetions, which the multiple carbs was also not allowed in Trans Am racing. They were allowed to race, but the race cars had the smaller cubic inch engines, but the street cars did not. You know, they still had to produce the cars for homologation, and they didn't have to be as close to the race car as they did in 69. So it's kind of funny that this thing is actually full-on named after the Trans Am series, and it was not allowed to race in it for 69. But some of the features that this 69 Trans Am has on it that I really like, of course, is that hood. It's just a ram air hood. Really sharp looking hood with some really big scoops on it. And I really like the spoiler that they had on the back there. Not too many spoilers back then, but that one, and it was a pretty functional spoiler too. Another thing are these scoops on the side of the fenders here, which I understand are actually functional for extracting the heat out of them. The regular Firebird had some indentions there and some grills, but they were not actually functional. But on the Trans Am, I understand that they were. Also, all of them came in Camino Ivory White and the blue stripes, which is a nod for the American Sports Car Series in international racing, which is why a lot of these cars were actually white and blue. And also, some of the standard features in the Trans Am were the ride and handling package. This car actually had a variable power steering, a bigger 1-inch sway bar, and it was one of the first, I believe it was the first, but it may not be, one of the first to actually have harder rubber bushings to help deflect the suspension and help it corner better. So it was one of the better handling cars. And that suspension package was standard in all of the Trans Ams for 1969. It was available in any of the Firebird 400s and some of the other models, but in the Trans Am it was standard. Same thing with the safety track rear axle package with 355 gears. You could change out the gears, I understand, but it came with those. And that rounded out the suspension package, but quite a car. And you know, some of that is depicted here in the model kit too. When it came to the 400 engines, the 69 Trans Am came standard with the Ram Air 3 packaged 400 engine. They also had the Ram Air 4, and it was rated at 335 horsepower, which was only 5 horsepower more than the standard 400 that was available in the Firebird 400 for 69. So you can kind of see it was underrated in that car. And when it came to the Ram Air 4, it was rated at 345 horsepower, which in the same year GTO was rated at 370 horsepower. So you can definitely tell that on paper the engines were definitely a little more underrated in the Trans Am package cars than they were in these. Now they did come with the 3-speed manual, which is very rare. 4-speed manual and automatic were available behind the two two engines. The 3-speed manual was not available behind the Ram Air 4, and the Ram Air 4 was very rare. When it came to productions of these cars, here's one thing that they did say it was going to be a limited production car. So when it came to the 69 Trans Am, only 697 of these were made, 8 of them being convertibles. None of the convertibles were Ram Air 4, but the Ram Air 4 production, those ones, there was only 55 of them made in the Ram Air 4. So those are very rare and very desirable, and most of them are manual trannies. You could get the automatic behind the Ram Air 4, but most people went for the 4-speed close ratio, which was the only 4-speed available behind the Ram Air 4. The wide ratio 4-speed was available behind the Ram Air 3, and I don't believe the close ratio was available behind the Ram Air 3. That close ratio, plus the higher winding motor and the gearing that was available in the Ram Air 4 package cars, a lot of those really over revved and engines were damaged. So they're even rarer to have the original engines when it came to the Ram Air 4s. But when it comes to building this particular model kit, the model kit is okay. I really struggled with this one, and I built this one back in 2005 as one of the new reissued ones. I had bought the checker box one, which we used to call the Walmart checker box one, which was a $5 kit at the time. And I had picked up a couple of them, but I built one of them. And that particular kit came with the black stripes and not the blue stripes, and it didn't have Trans Am or Ram Air 3 on it. Those had to come from Fred Cady, so I bought his decal package to do this, which his decals are really nice. And I actually got 2 more sets of them, because this build actually fought me, and it's not one of my better builds. So that's why I'm kind of showing it to you here. And there's some issues with this particular kit that I don't really understand. And as I was collecting some of the older kits, because I had some real trouble getting the front to fit and glue to the front bumper, and so there's some touch-up paint that was brushed there, and did some touching up on there because I ended up gluing my finger with super glue to the front. And the front fits pretty decently. It takes a little bit of sanding and shaping to get it to fit. And same thing, the hood's kind of an issue. Sits a little far in the back, and I didn't correct any of these things, and I didn't really get the decal setting solution to get these to sit better. Plus the stripes kind of take a turn. It's kind of funny, but the real car, the stripes did follow the hood this way. And it's kind of interesting because on the real car they got kind of wider and then closer together. And I just knocked the rear bumper off. Well, that's okay. This one's actually kind of falling apart too, so that's kind of some of the other issues here. You can see the chassis is loose. And I kind of want to rebuild it. The engine is actually loose. So I'll show you the engine here, which is one of the issues I kind of have with this one. The later issues seem to have this correct air cleaner, which isn't all that great, but it's better. The early issues have the chrome air cleaner. And when I say early issues, I've got one that just says 69 Firebird. I'm going to show the box arts here. That says 69 Firebird. And it has the Trans Am parts to build the Trans Am. It doesn't come with the Trans Am decals. And then what's now becoming very hard to find, the Sundancer kit, which is from 1981. I have a 1980 issue and a 1981 issue. And the Sundancer kit, it's got side pipes, all the Trans Am parts, but it is a convertible, and it has custom wheels. The 1980 issue Firebird has the stock wheels in it, and you can almost build them both stock, but they don't have this air cleaner, which is, all of the Ram Air cars had that air cleaner. So, and then you can see this firewall is loose and falling out. This engine is loose. But I kind of don't want to rebuild this one, but it looks like I'm going to have to glue some of this stuff back together. And this, I followed the directions, glue it to this and put it together. So it's kind of funny how you have to do some of this stuff as far as the directions go. But I just remember really struggling with this particular build and getting it back together. Oh, and one of the other things, this interior, when it came to the real cars, most of them had blue interior. But other colors were available when it came to the Trans Am. The one here locally had white interior, which is one of the reasons why I thought it was not a real Trans Am, but it was. I'd seen some red interior cars, so other interior colors were available. And looking at some of the options, a black vinyl top and a blue vinyl top was available on the Trans Am also. I did not see any cars built with those. So some unusual options. And another thing that talking with the owner of the local Trans Am, his actually said Firebird, and then had the Trans Am logo right below it. It had the Firebird emblems. The production cars were not supposed to have the Firebird emblems on them, but his was one of the first 10 built in the LA plant, where most of these were built in Detroit. So his was kind of one of the first ones built, and it got white interior and the Firebird emblems were left on the fenders, and his was like that, and he had had it a very long time, and he restored it to exactly how his particular car was, even though he said he's been dinged a couple of times at shows because it's not supposed to have them, but his particular car did, and he had some documentation to kind of prove that. But it was just interesting. I remember just talking with the owner of that car, and it was a local car that was sold new here, and he was the second owner and had it a very long time. Like I said, it's one of those cars that I really like, I really enjoy, and I'm sure it's a great street package car, wonderful car, and they just didn't sell very well. And to kind of bring that point, like I said, there's 697 of them were built, 8 of them being convertibles, but not being able to race into the package that it was meant for, that I'm sure had a lot to do with the sales figures, because when you look at the 69 Z28, 20,000 of those were made, and it was able to race, so the exposure definitely helped push sales. So the race on Sunday, sell on Monday definitely applied, and I'm sure that's one of the things that hurt the Trans Am package cars for 69, and but it became one heck of a seller after that, for the years after that. So car I really like. Model kit I didn't really like building as much, because this one, there's a lot of fitting issues, there's a lot of problems, and when it comes to the model kits. And one of the last things that cracks me up and I don't understand, which is what really got me into kit histories of these things, is I mentioned the interior on this one. The seat pattern on this one is very different. It's not really correct. I'm not really sure what it was modeled after, but this was the 2005 issue. My 1980 issue, the blue box car, it has a different seat pattern on the seats, front and back. And I have the same thing with the Sundancer kit. If you guys have the Sundancer kit, look at its interior. It also has a different seat pattern, which is the one I see most of the time. The Sundancer actually has the most correct interior from what I've seen. I have 3 different issues of Trans Am kits, and they all have different interior tubs. So I have 3 different interior tubs. So that's one thing I just don't understand, but it applies to this car. But anyway, that's kind of enough rambling on. And when it comes to building these things, I haven't built the other ones because, you know, I had such a hard time with this particular kit, and it was mostly doing with this front end and all those parts, getting them to fit and getting the hood to fit, because this piece is just very thin and tends to warp a little bit, and it's a little harder to deal with. And as you can see, some of the decals are flaking. I didn't bare metal foil this one. It was probably one of the last ones I didn't foil, or I didn't go back and redo any of it, because I'd like to redo this one, but this one I've left alone and it's falling apart. I think I'm going to re-glue some of these parts on it, and I'll leave it alone because I have the other ones to build, because I know I can do a much better job now, but just haven't been too motivated. Cause it's like, do I want to upgrade the engine compartment, put a better engine in it, detail it up a little bit better, because it's one of those cars I really like and I would like to do all of that, but I'm not so sure I'm going to go that far. Maybe I will on on the convertible when I do the Sundancer and make the Trans Am convertible one of 8. There's another thing with that particular car. 8 of them were built. All 8 of them still exist, and 4 of them are in the brothers collection, which is amazing that they own half of them. But anyway, that's just my last note and piece of trivia on the cars. But anyways, this is kind of enough babbling on here. Thank you for tuning in, subscribing, and all of your comments. I really appreciate it. And hit that bell button so you can see the latest uploads from me. As you know, I do them every Saturday. You guys, you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you next Saturday.